The chrome handlebars gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of the roadside diner as Marcus, Razor, Vance killed his engine, but his steel-gray eyes had already locked onto something that made his blood run cold, the way the young waitress with auburn hair flinched when she reached for the coffee pot, how she tugged her sleeve down frantically to cover the purple and yellow marks creeping up her forearm, and the carefully practiced smile that didn't quite reach her terrified eyes. In that split second, something ancient and protective stirred in the battle-scarred leader of the Iron Wolves, and though he didn't know it yet, the next few hours would shatter everything both of them thought they knew about salvation, courage, and the unexpected places where redemption finds its way home. If you believe that kindness can change lives, that second chances matter, and that sometimes the most unlikely heroes emerge from the darkest places, please hit that like button, drop a comment below, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Only Kindness, because every story we share here proves that compassion is the most powerful force in the universe. Marcus hadn't planned to stop at Rosie's diner that November night. His crew was waiting 20 miles up the highway, and he had business to handle before dawn. But something pulled him off Interstate 40, maybe the bite of hunger in his gut, maybe the restlessness that came from too many years living on the edge of society's margins. He walked through the door, his leather vest bearing the Iron Wolves patch, his boots heavy on the worn linoleum, and immediately felt the familiar shift in atmosphere that always followed him. Conversations quieted, a mother pulled her child closer. But Marcus was used to being feared. What he wasn't used to was the flash of genuine terror he saw in the waitress's face when she approached his corner booth. Her name tag read, Sienna. She couldn't have been more than 23, with those auburn curls pulled back in a messy bun and exhaustion carved into the delicate bones of her face. When she poured his coffee, her hands trembled so violently that the liquid sloshed over the rim, and that's when Marcus saw them, the bruises. Dark, deliberate finger marks wrapped around her wrist like a shackle. A yellowing mark along her jawline that makeup couldn't quite hide, and something deeper, something broken in the way she held herself, like a bird with clipped wings who'd forgotten what flying felt like. Marcus had seen enough violence in his 42 years to recognize its signature. He'd dealt it out himself in his younger days, before he'd found a strange kind of honor among the Iron Wolves, before he'd learned that strength without protection was just cruelty wearing a different mask. His father had been a brutal man. His mother had worn bruises like Sienna's. And Marcus had made himself a promise at 15, standing over his father's hospital bed after finally fighting back. He would never let himself become that, and he would never ignore it when he saw it in the world. Sienna took his order with downcast eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. When she walked away, Marcus noticed the limp she tried to hide, the way she winced when she bent to clear a nearby table. He watched her work through the reflection in the window, watched how she startled every time the door opened, watched how her gaze kept darting to the parking lot like she was expecting a monster to walk through at any moment. Marcus knew that kind of fear. It lived in the body, in the muscles, in the constant state of bracing for the next blow. He pulled out his phone and made a call to his second-in-command, a woman named Phantom Rodriguez who'd survived her own hell and now ran a network of safe houses across 3 states. I need information on a Sienna, works at Rosie's Diner on Route 40. And I need it fast. By the time his burger arrived, Marcus had the whole ugly picture. Sienna Crawford, 24, married for 3 years to a deputy sheriff named Cole Crawford. 2 domestic disturbance calls to their address, both mysteriously dropped. A restraining order filed and then withdrawn. A pattern that Marcus recognized all too well, the abuser with a badge, the victim trapped in a system designed to protect the very man destroying her, the small town where everyone looked the other way because it was easier than confronting one of their own. When Sienna brought his check, her sleeve rode up again, and Marcus saw what looked like a burn mark. Something in him snapped, not into violence. He'd left that version of himself behind years ago, but into absolute, unshakable resolve. He pulled out a card he always carried, pressed it into her hand along with enough cash to cover a meal 10 times over, and spoke in a voice rough with barely contained fury and unexpected gentleness. The card had a single phone number and 3 words, Safe House Network. Marcus watched understanding bloom in Sienna's eyes, followed immediately by the desperate, heartbreaking shake of her head. I can't, she whispered, tears spilling over. He'll find me, he always finds me, and he'll kill me this time. Marcus stood slowly, his considerable height and presence filling the space, but he kept his voice gentle. Listen to me, I've got 12 safe houses, 30 brothers and sisters who've all survived what you're surviving, and resources your husband can't touch. But more than that, I've got something he'll never have, I keep my promises. You call that number, and I promise you, he will never touch you again. What happened next unfolded like a storm breaking. Sienna's husband walked through the diner door at exactly midnight, his deputy uniform crisp, his smile cold and possessive. He grabbed Sienna's arm with practiced cruelty, and that's when Marcus stepped between them, not with violence, but with the kind of quiet, absolute authority that came from a man who'd faced down death and worse. Let her go, Marcus said, and something in his voice made Cole's hand drop. The confrontation could have exploded. Cole reached for his service weapon. But Marcus had already called not just Phantom, but also a state trooper he'd helped years ago, a woman who'd been gathering evidence on Cole Crawford for months. Within an hour, Cole was in handcuffs, and Sienna was in the passenger seat of Marcus's bike, her few possessions in a backpack, riding toward freedom through the night. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves, please leave us a comment below telling us what kindness means to you. 3 months later, Sienna stood in a new apartment in a new city, working at a bakery she loved, attending therapy twice a week, and slowly rediscovering the woman she'd been before fear became her constant companion. Marcus visited sometimes, not as a savior but as a friend, and through him, Sienna found an entire community of survivors who'd reclaimed their lives. She learned that courage doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers, "I'll try again tomorrow." And sometimes, it wears a leather vest and rides a motorcycle, proving that heroes emerge from the most unexpected places, and that one moment of choosing kindness over indifference can change absolutely everything. The end.